Hey y'all, Bill Quirk with Shoot GTR on the Defensive Training Group. Here today to do a quick video on a new product, something that you probably heard about, the new 15-round OEM, original equipment manufacturer, magazines for the Glock 43X and the Glock 48. Most of you probably know, some of you maybe don't know that this is a new release from Glock. We just got some in the past couple of weeks. So it's a really brand new product. They've been talking about it for about a month and a half now. But really exciting because it's going to elevate the platform, the Glock 43X and the Glock 48, and put it on par capacity-wise with some of the other similarly sized guns that are out there from other manufacturers. So just to kind of back up and go through the history for those of you that maybe aren't aware. So you've got your Glock 43X, your Glock 48. These are the slimline 9mm pistols that Glock introduced many years ago, aimed for the concealed carry market. And originally, and this was quite a bit back, when they first came out, the gun came with a slimline, single stack 10-round magazine. And at the time, that was deemed acceptable, given that the guns were legitimately smaller than your Glock 19, Glock 17. They were thinner and whatnot. And at the time, this was consistent with a lot of other concealed carry guns, 10 rounds, even 8 rounds for a lot of the single stack 9mm, the 3913, the SIG PT25, the previous generation of single stack 9mm pistols. So this was looked at as being good. But flashing forward with the introduction of the SIG P365, the Springfield Armory Hellcat, even the M&P Shield series, as they have grown now to the Shield X, you started seeing comparably sized pistols, slimline pistols, with magazine capacities of 12, 15, even 17 rounds. And that was something that the gun buying public was talking about. They loved their Glocks, legendary reliability, great product. But there was a comment that, hey, the capacity is not there. So you had some of the aftermarket companies step in to fill the void, and the big one was Shield Arms. And they've been producing this for a while. This is actually a 3rd generation example of their magazine, but it's a flush fit 15-round metal magazine for the Glock 43X and Glock 48. PSA also makes their Dagger magazines, their slimline magazines. I don't have any of those here, but there's another 15-round, mostly metal in that case, alternative out there as well. The thing about the Shield mags, because the cutout for where the magazine release engages is just a hollow spot, you've got some sharp edges here, and as a result, Shield Arms recommends that you swap out to their metal magazine catch that you see on this Glock 48 that I've got here, rather than using the original manufacturer's polymer version. It's because those sharp metal edges can shave polymer and eventually defeat the integrity of the magazine release if you're using the factory polymer version. So they recommend that you switch out to their version, which is metal. Otherwise, it's the same, slightly extended. And that way you've got metal on metal. The problem is that limits your ability to use the original magazines, the polymer magazines. They don't fit as well, and sometimes, I just had this happen a minute ago, it'll lock in and you have to kind of force it to get it back out. So that was a solution, but it wasn't ideal. The Shield mags are good. Some people really like them. I've got several students that run these, and after some trial and error and breaking them in, they've got to the point where they are reliable. They have the 3rd generation now because they did have some growing pains as they went. Some people like them, some people don't like them. I've got several of these, and they've been pretty good. They are not 100% in my experience, but like I said, I have several students that have run them and they are 100% with them, but perhaps I just haven't broken them in yet. But with a Glock, we don't expect to have to break anything in, so that is an issue. So that gets us to today, where we are now, the past couple of weeks. We now have these metal Glock branded, so they're OEM, 15-round, mostly flush fit, we'll talk about that in a second, magazines for the Glock 43X and the 48. And these are produced by, I believe, Mekgar. They also make the Staccato Glock pattern magazines that are run in the Staccato HD series. And these look very similar. So these are, like I said, mostly flush fit. And what's nice about these is the magazine release cutout, if you will, Rather than being a hole with sharp edges, it's a recess that has beveled edges, and that allows you to continue to use your original polymer magazine release in the pistol as it comes in the pistol without worrying about shaving those edges off as the sharp corners on the other mags interface with that. These are rounded so you don't have that problem. So this is good to go with your existing polymer mag catch. One of the concerns or one of the criticisms that people have talked about online is this was billed as a flush fit magazine, and it's not really flush fit. People get upset about that. It's an aesthetic thing, and I'm going to dismiss this as really being not that big of a deal. It is slightly longer, and I'm sure that Glock MechGuard did that specifically to alleviate some of that compression tension that makes those mags harder to load and stuff like that. We all know that the Shield mags and the 365 mags can be very difficult to load because they're so size efficient. There's no more compression space left when the magazine is loaded to capacity. In this case, that might be why they made it a little bit longer, just to make it a little bit easier. Because one thing that people do like about Glocks is their magazines tend to be fairly easy to load compared to some other manufacturers out there. So I'm going to show you with this one. This is an OEM frame with a arc reactor slide on it. But this is your original 10-round magazine. And that's going to be our baseline for flush fit. Shield mag, roughly the same. The base plate is just marginally taller, thicker, but basically still flush fit. So now we get to the new mag, and still a little bit extended even beyond the Shield mag, but nothing to speak of. This is not a big deal. This is not going to severely or significantly impact your concealed carry experience with a good belt and a good holster and the whole system approach that we've spoken about in other videos. If you're running this with a magwell, in this case, this is a Radian Weapons, one of their Anchor magwells, it doesn't protrude significantly at all, and it looks good. The aesthetics of it, if that's something you're concerned about, I think are fine. They look pretty good, and there is some purchase to get in there if you need to forcibly extract the mag with a malfunction or something. With your OEMs, they're a little bit tighter, and it might be a bit harder to get a finger in there if you have to forcibly extract this in the case of some kind of malfunction. This one gives you a little bit more purchase to do that, so that's actually a good thing from an operator standpoint, to use that word operator when you're out operating operationally in an operational environment. So those of you that know me, that's one of the jokes that I always make, because that word is grossly overused. I digress. So back to these things. I like them. I think they are going to be a revitalization of the Glock 43X48 platform. I have experienced some hopefully growing pain issues with these, and I'll talk about that now. So one of my my former students, who is a very, very good shooter, very experienced shooter, told me a couple days ago that he's been having some problems with his mags. He's been experiencing a bunch of different malfunctions in a Glock 43X that he carries on duty. And a very reliable gun. He's got lots and lots and lots of rounds through it. So we're pretty sure it's magazine based. The ammunition's consistent, the gun's consistent. And after describing to me the malfunctions he was having, my immediate thought was some kind of geometry issue. It sounds like the slide was not going fully back into battery, and he was getting a failure to fire. So pressing the trigger, getting a click, but no bang. There was a round in the chamber, and when he described this to me, I said, okay, this is what I think is happening. So I then took my two out, and at this point, I don't have a lot of rounds through these. I have about 100 rounds through my two that I put through in fairly quick succession. And I had one of these malfunctions. And so to explain what I think is happening, as I've discussed before, when you're shooting a semi-automatic pistol, any semi-automatic pistol, the gun is dependent on you to be strong behind it at the moment of ignition, because it needs to be able to cycle against you, against a fixed point of your hand. If, for whatever reason, you dissipate the energy that this gun needs, you can start to induce malfunctions. It's what we call limp wristing, and it's much more than just your wrist. It can be your elbows, it can be rocking back on your heels, a bunch of different things. But if you bleed any of that energy off that the gun requires to correctly cycle, you can start to get malfunctions. You can get failures to feed, failures to eject. Kind of the precursor that you'll see is, rather than the brass ejecting out to the right, it's going to come straight back at you, hit you in the head, and that kind of thing. and that's a warning that you're not giving the gun you're not giving the gun the input that it needs. Smaller guns are always going to be more susceptible to shooter input or a lack thereof. And that's just something else that we see. They're sprung differently. The springs are stiffer and whatnot. And they have to be to maintain the reliability. And as a result, they are more susceptible to shooter input or a lack thereof. So in this case, the one malfunction that I had, I felt myself. I was thinking about the trigger press and looking at the target and thinking about the magazines and whatnot. And I felt myself loosen up a little bit. And what happened was, because the gun, I moved with the gun, when it went back into battery, it just wasn't, it was almost there, but as I pressed the trigger, and I've seen this happen, and I saw it happen, I witnessed this subsequent to what I'm describing now with another student, and I'll talk about that in a minute. But as I pressed the trigger, the slide moved forward that final fraction of an inch, and that action of pushing the slide forward was enough to bleed off the necessary energy, and I got a click instead of a bang. And I've seen this happen with other guns. It's by no means unique to this situation. So was mindful of that, finished that practice session and made sure that I was giving good input to the gun, solid point of contact, solid grip, loading into it, all the stuff we talk about. Didn't have a problem. Just in case you're interested, the ammunition I was shooting was the Staccato 124 grain full metal jacket, and had no problems whatsoever. The gun ran flawless. Did a subsequent practice session with another 50 rounds, and again, no problems whatsoever with either of my two magazines. Loaded them up, shot them, loaded them up, shot them, and had no problems at all. I had a student come out for a lesson, and she's shooting a largely stock Glock 43X, and I had her run these magazines to the tune of about 60 rounds through her guns, or her gun rather. And initially, when she was just getting into the session, had no problems whatsoever. They ran great. It was flawless. She was shooting a Fiocchi 115 grain and some Winchester White Box 115 grain, so different ammunition. They ran fine. Towards the end of the session, as she was starting to get a little bit tired and that shooter input was starting to fade off just a little bit, we started having these same malfunctions, these failure to fire, click instead of a bang. And I was watching very attentively and would see on about half, she had about 6 or 7, and about half of those I could see as she pressed the trigger, the slide was not fully in battery, and pressing the trigger forced it forward just a little bit, and that bled the energy off that the gun needed, especially with the Fiocchi, because the Fiocchis we're seeing, they have hard primers. So that was enough to give it a light primer strike. Shot those bullets again, they worked fine. She's got lots of rounds through this gun, so it's not the gun. OEM mags, the original 10 rounders work great. So these are hopefully just some growing pains, and they're just things that I wanted to talk about that you may experience. Smaller guns are more dependent upon you as a shooter to be strong behind them. Shooter input is going to be critical, so understand that. That's a general statement about these smaller guns, these concealed carry type guns. So be mindful of that. Monitor where that brass is going as it ejects, because that can give you information if you pay attention to it. In this case, if you're experiencing issues with the new 15-round mags, that could be what it is. And it's just a geometry thing. This is the first batch that have come out, and I'm sure the Glock is going to continue refining this as they get more input, more data, and so on and so forth. That's the spiel, if you will, on the new Glock 43X and 48 OEM 15-round flush fit magazines. I think it is a good thing. The quality is fantastic, growing pains notwithstanding. So as always, if you have any questions at all, give us a comment below, reach out to me, reach out to the shop. Give us a like, give us a share, and as always, y'all stay safe.